on my journey to create a biblically accurate bee dating game, I first had to look outward. What is love in the eyes of a honeybee? I read a lot of books and I watched a lot of videos, and to be honest, there is not a lot of romance in the honeybee mating process. So it goes like this. The new queen is born, she stabs all of her sisters because there can only be one, and then she goes out of her hive to find 10 to 20 vigorous young drones to mate with and steal their life force. But the drones are okay with it. Their only job in the hive is knocking boots. None of this bee-movie nonsense. They don't work. They spend all day sniffing around for a queen to mate with. And they've got these like huge eyes, so once they've sniffed her out, it's only a matter of time before they spot her. And then at that point, it's basically a game of tag. Whoever is the fastest gets to mate with the queen. And the first, again, like 10 to 20, sometimes 30 drones that get to mate with the queen get their DNA to live on in the next generation. An added bonus, they get the sweet release of death. I actually did have an idea for a game that would have utilized this exact concept. I think it would have been a banger. It would have been a box office success, a hit smash, kapow. But James said that it was too dark and not at all cozy, and that I would scare the people. Maybe I'll share that idea one day. But what are the story elements we have here? Only the strongest and fastest get to mate with a queen. But what if you're a drone and you're not strong and you're not fast? What do you do then? That is our story. But of course, I wasn't done creating our world after we came up with the story, because I want this game to be accurate enough. Because I think bees are really interesting, and I think it would be really fun to incorporate a lot of their natural lore into this game. But well, maybe not necessarily without all of the brutality, but maybe with a nice little filter on it. A cute filter on the brutality. Side note, can you believe that it has been 19 years since the last piece of romantic media centering bees has been released? We're here to change that. Eat your heart out, Barry. If you're actually interested in this concept, I don't want to give too many in-game spoilers. So now, in no particular order, I'm gonna rattle off some of my favorite honeybee facts that I have learned through this process, and you're gonna listen. The nectar of the blue gum eucalyptus makes bees aggressive. Of course, this tree is native to Australia. Where else in the world would nature be giving bees natural steroids? Yes, this will be in the game. Passion flower nectar, on the other hand, makes bees drunk. Honeybees actually aren't the #1 pollinator for these flowers. They're too little to get up on the flower's anther and get the pollen off of it when they're gathering nectar. So it's usually bigger bees like bumblebees and carpenter bees that are big enough to rub up against the anthers of the flower and spread its seed everywhere. I have not found a place for this in the game yet, but if you have any suggestions, let me know. Do you want your bees to get tipsy? You've been lied to about what a beehive looks like. Have you ever wondered where this image came from? This generic beehive that we see everywhere is not actually what beehives look like. This man-made invention is called a skep, and it's one of the earliest ways that beekeepers kept bees. They're a lot easier to draw than an actual hive in a tree. But one of the major drawbacks of using a skep is you can't really harvest the honey without destroying the hive, and earlier beekeepers would just go for it. Things like plunging the entire skep into water to kill the bees, or placing the skep on top of hot coals on the ground to smother the bees. Later, beekeepers started shaking the bees out or finding ways to drive them into an empty skep. But now, in most places, skeps are illegal because you need to be able to remove frames for inspection to make sure your hive is healthy and to prevent the spread of disease to other apiaries. This will not be in the game. Honey is actually a kind of bee puke. Okay, this one, a lot of scientists don't like for you to say this, and they're like, it's not fact, it's not bee puke. But I think that that's just like big honey talking. I think that they don't want you to know this. They say it's not puke because it goes in a second stomach and not the first stomach. like it doesn't get like digested and come back up. So because it goes in that second stomach and you can regurgitate it, they don't want to call it puke. But how they make it is that they go get the nectar from the flower, they come back to the hive, they pass it on to some of the younger worker bees who then like go through the same process. They take it in their honey stomach, they squirt it into somebody else's mouth, and it just goes down a chain until the water content is reduced and it's mostly the sugars that we know honey to be. This will sort of be in the game, so don't. Maybe like instead of puke, we can call it like bee spit. Foraging is actually seen as a specialized skill in the honeybee world. It should be seen as a specialized skill in our world too. If I went out and picked up mushrooms, I would poison myself. Only the older and a little bit more mature bees are allowed to go out and forage for a few different reasons, but the younger bees will stay back at the hive and do other things like take care of the larva, take care of the hive, defend the hive, and of course, turn the nectar into honey. See, it seems so idyllic. It's not something that I would have thought, oh yeah, it's really dangerous for a bee to go out and to forage, but apparently younger bees, when they go out to forage, they oftentimes don't come back. Sad music. Cue the sad music. This will not necessarily be in this game, but it will be in our next. Stay tuned for Hive and Hollow. Worker bees work themselves to death. During the working seasons like the spring and summer, worker bees usually only live like 30 days, whereas over the winter they can live for months because they're not constantly working themselves to death. And sometimes they do this on purpose for the good of the colony. Yes, in the game, no further questions, yes. I don't know why I had never thought about this, but there are different types of honeybees. Have you seen the red dwarf honeybee? It is so pretty. And the dark European bee. This won't be in the game, it just made sense story-wise for all of the bees in the story to be of the same subspecies. But they are different shades of yellow, just for fun. Side note, I saw a picture of a potato beetle recently, and I'd never seen it before. Apparently it's like a little Idaho potato terrorist that like goes and terrorizes all the potatoes in Idaho or something. But it looks like the ladybug's fine art cousin. Like the ladybug's like, it's me, I'm Cheryl, and that's my cousin Charlene. She's real fancy, she's popular city folk. It's a shame that they're not a beneficial insect like ladybugs and that they're little potato nommers, potato ruiners. I love potatoes, and I hate that I find these bugs so beautiful. Bees dance to communicate. It's actually called a waggle dance. I dance to communicate too, but James tells me that that's uncouth and that I should use my words. Man's never heard of non-verbal communication. Just like a man. It's called the waggle dance. They do it to tell the other bees where something is, like a nectar source or water, or even a location for a potential new hive if they've begun to outgrow theirs. This isn't in the game, but it probably will be in the next one, Hive and Hollow. Bees have ultimate moves. Apart from stinging, of course. If a predator is introduced to their area, or if a queen has stopped laying and they're like, you need to die because we need more babies, they will do something called honeyballing, where they all just dogpile on the victim and beat their wings really fast to burn the victim alive. Yeah, bees are really hardcore. This last fact I couldn't exactly verify 100%, but I thought that it was... I was intrigued! It's the most interesting one. A lot of people interpret bees as one unit, like a lot of cells working together to keep one organism alive. But sometimes the queen and the workers fight. Stay with me here. This is going to be a roller coaster of conflicting theories. I will explain. We're going to start with what we know for sure. A queen can choose whether she gives birth to a worker or a drone. Drones actually come from unfertilized eggs. They're just clones of the queen. But workers are made from sexual reproduction. They have a mother, the queen, and a father, one of the many drones the queen might have mated with. Also fact, workers can determine how many drones and how many workers are in the hive in 3 different ways. The queen lays her eggs in cells within the hive. And who makes those cells? Workers do. And drones are way bigger than workers, and so they need bigger cells for the queen to lay them in. So bigger cells for the drones, smaller cells for the workers. The workers choose how many of these cells are made, and this can affect how many drones versus workers a colony produces. Number 2, once a larva has matured and can leave its cell, that cell can be cleaned and reused. Who's in charge of the cleaning too? It's the workers. If they don't clean that cell, the queen can't lay eggs in it. And number 3, the workers take care of all of the larvae until they're mature enough to leave their cell. Sometimes they might neglect certain larvae in favor of others, and the neglected larva might die. So we have the facts. Both queens and workers have the ability to regulate how their hive grows. Now here's the juicy bits, the things that I found interesting. I watched a really interesting video that suggested that queens and workers fight specifically over who is born in the hive. It explained that queens prefer more drones to be born because that means their DNA gets passed on to the next generation, and that workers would actually prefer for more workers to be born because that means they get more help around the hive, and they also are more genetically related to workers than they are to drones.
It's genetically beneficial for workers to favor their sisters over their much more distantly related brothers. So they preferentially feed female larvae, leaving male larvae to beg for scraps, which aren't always enough to keep them alive. Sometimes, workers will even kill drone larvae to free up food and care for more workers.
I thought this was really interesting and I wanted to know more just out of curiosity's sake. And I am not an expert, so take everything that I say here with the tiniest grain of salt. But I found some articles that might conflict with the video's interpretation of how this works. One study that I found took some hives, and half of them they gave the queens only drone cells to lay their eggs in. And the other half of the hive, they gave their queens only worker cell to lay their eggs in. And then, after the queens did their laying on those specific frames, they returned them back to their normal frames, which had some drone cells and some worker cells on each. The queens that could only lay workers absolutely ramped up production on drones, but none of the new drone larvae seemed to be neglected by any of the workers. Additionally, stay with me here, I found another article that analyzed which types of bees the workers were more likely to turn into queens. It was hypothesized that workers would want to choose larvae that were more closely related to them to be queen. But that actually wasn't true. And just a reminder, they're all at least sisters, possibly half sisters, because the queen mated with like 10, 20, 30 drones, so their paternal lineage is varied. So some of the workers can be more related to each other more than they're related to other workers. But the study actually showed that workers were more likely to choose larvae with paternal lineage that was more rare in the hive, as in there were fewer workers with that paternal lineage, instead of larvae they shared more DNA with. So I don't know, it's for sure true that workers do balance out numbers in the hive, but maybe it's not as malicious as "you won't help around the house when you're growing up, so I'm killing you," or "she's more related to me, so I'm killing you." Maybe they cull the numbers naturally when the need arises, when there's maybe danger or shortages. I don't know, I feel like I might be personifying these bees a little too much. I did go down quite the rabbit hole. Maybe there really is this silent passive-aggressive war going on between the queens and the workers. Who knows? So this fact is obviously not going in the game, at least not until I have coffee with an entomologist about this. But I can't believe you let me talk to you about bees for this long, and I really can't believe that you're still here after that weird wormhole of a journey that I just took you through. Thanks for letting me info dump on you. If you know the answer to my bee question, please leave it in the comments. Explain it to me in great detail, or even if you just want to theorize with me, give me your theory. If you'd like to follow the journey of Meant to Be, the dating sim I've been writing for, I'll be creating it with some friends over the summer. We'll be posting progress and thoughts about its creation right here. If you're someone who appreciates games made by small teams with a ton of heart and soul put into them, consider supporting us on Patreon. And even if you can't, you being here and discussing games with us in the comments means the world to us. And a special thanks to Justin Dunnis, Johnny the Rooks with the Spaces, and J&K Sugar Mama. Thanks and have a great day.